Okay, lads. So, what I'm going to do is this presentation is more about the mental faculties, if you want to look at it that way. Okay. So we're looking beyond the physical, and the whole idea of this topic or presentation was that it actually, to me, this is the starting point for everyone. This is where everyone needs to do a lot of deep work in terms of understanding themselves as a person, understanding their value system, understanding the power of their subconscious mind, the power of their beliefs, and even the power of their thoughts, right? Now, I'm not a psychologist. I don't have all the answers, but I'll certainly say that personally I have done more or as much work on this area of my own development as I have done on my physical development. Okay. So just look at the dominant paradigm. The dominant paradigm of society is it's it's self-loathing, it's self-hate, it's lack of self-belief. It is just look around you. There's a reason that drug use, gambling addiction, alcohol addiction is at an all-time high among highly educated people. This isn't any longer confined to social classes. This is across the board. And it all comes down, in my opinion, a lot of it comes down to lack of knowledge of self, lack of self-image, lack of self-esteem, no real direction and no project in your life. And that's what we're going to touch on, okay? Now, again, everything comes with a disclaimer. As I said, some of this is confrontational, right? But that's the idea of it, okay? So it's called conscious awareness, all right? And level one of this, or the first step of this, is just awareness of yourself. We need a deep understanding of ourselves, self-awareness, emotional awareness. It's so important, right? It is just so important. And it just blows my mind that we put kids through school and through an education system where we never even touch on this. We have no real recognition of this whatsoever. And to me, as I said, it's a starting point. So again, right, the situation as I see it, right, it's just this herd mentality and a world that's designed so the weakest don't fail, right? And it all comes down to a lack of self-belief and a poor self-image. And I think that the root cause of this is that we value ourselves off results, and then we think our worth is based off results, okay? And this concept of results driven, all right, it means that we if we don't achieve what we lay out to achieve, then we feel like crap about ourselves because we're all driven by this concept of instant gratification, right? And instant gratification has left the whole world feeling like crap, all right? People compare themselves against other people. People compare themselves against the images and the influencers that social media and the world put us out to compare ourselves against. And the solution of this is we need to change what we take out to the world and change what the world sees of us, right? So we need not to lead with results, okay? So that challenge is to redefine who we are, okay? So we need to be focused on growth. We need to be focused on creation. And when we do that, when we focus on growth and creation, amazing things are possible. So we don't think about the result, we think about where we're going, all right? So like, think about a goal. What's the fundamental purpose of a goal? The fundamental purpose of a goal is to allow you to grow as a person. That's what it is. Like when I teach juggling, it's not about a 3-ball juggle. It's not about someone getting a 4-ball juggle. It's about the growth that's associated with the process of juggling, dealing with failure, dealing with picking up the ball. Like I always say this, like what's frustration? Frustration is the highest, just the highest level, absolute highest level of egotism, because frustration is the anticipation that you're going to be good at something without ever putting the work in. That's what frustration is, and that's where we need to remove the ego. All right. So we're leading with thoughts. We sink these into our subconscious things, and again, amazing things can happen. And how do we do this? We ask difficult questions like, what are you worth? What's your value as a human? What's your value to society? What do you put out there? Like someone asked me this one time, if your kids grew up exactly like you, would you be happy? And it's a confrontational question. And I'm going to get into this in a minute. And then if we all unmuted our microphones and if we laid out our deepest our deepest self-limiting belief, okay, would we be proud of it? And this is, I've done this with teams, I've done this with people in the past, and it's called, if you knew me, you'd know that. And you finish with, you'd know that with your biggest, deepest limiting belief. And most people are ashamed of those beliefs. And the truth of it is, and this is what we're going to touch on, when I ask you if your kids, would you be happy if your kids grew up like you? The chances are your kids will grow up like you, because we condition our kids to have the same thought system, the same belief system, through the same environment that we put out to them. And before the age of 6, that's when that all happens, okay? So the underlying point here is, you're not your name, you're not your past, you're far more powerful than that. That's why, you know, when we compare ourselves to being like, you know, if you're coaching, I don't know, a soccer team, and if you're trying to be like Barcelona, or if you're coaching a hurling team and you're trying to be like Kilkenny, or if you're coaching a rugby team and you're trying to be like the All Blacks, you can never be those people or those teams. You can always just be the best version of you, okay? So another question is, if the person you were yesterday died, if you were to reinvent yourself now, then would you be the same person, or what would you change? And we're all energy, and your DNA is built on that. And once we realize that we have to spend time every day, every single day, focused energetically on the person we need to become, then amazing things will happen. And we're energetic people. It's like the lawnmower versus the dog, right? You know, if your lawnmower is broken, you need to fix that mechanically. So you're going to bring that to a mechanic or a person who fixes a lawnmower in that way. If your cat or your dog is sick, you don't bring them to someone who will fix them mechanically. You go to a doctor and you fix them energetically. And that's how you heal. And as humans, we're the same. We're energetic species, we're energetic organisms. So energy matters. And the sad thing is, we don't value what we can measure on the energetic plane. We value what we can measure on the chemical plane and on the mechanical plane. But we all have the ability to change emotion. And what's emotion? Emotion is just energy in motion. So we all know that we've been in a room where someone has shifted the energy in the room. And we've all been in the room where people have done that positively and negatively. So, you know, someone can come in and there could be an elephant in the room, and it changes the energy in the room. Walk into a funeral, that's energy. You know, walk into a stadium filled with 60,000 people watching a match, and someone scores a goal, that's energy. So it's just creating awareness around this stuff, okay? So again, this picture, like, we are unlimited with what we can do. You know, we are infinitely more powerful than just one cell of our body is infinitely more powerful than the new iPhone that will come out. You know, and again, we don't value that. We don't value what the real value is in life until we nearly use that. The real value in life is our health and our time. And beyond that, everything else isn't that valuable. You know, you could meet the wealthiest man on his deathbed, and the one thing that he can't buy back is time. And he would probably trade everything just to get more time. You know, we have our kids today and we have our youth today, and even we're probably, you know, guilty of it ourselves, where, you know, we put so much value on iPhones, we put so much value on these external things, and we need to look deep inside ourselves and think of ourselves as being limitless, think of ourselves as being infinitely more powerful than anything we can imagine on earth. And when we do that, we'll make amazing shifts. All right, so the idea of this whole group is, right, it's about changing together. Okay, so there's 2 ways you can change, and this is deeply embedded in research. Okay, you can find a destination group. So a destination group are a group of people who are already where you want to be. Okay, so you model yourself off someone who has achieved something that you want to achieve. All right, or you have a journey group, and a journey group are a group of people who are on the same journey as you. So you can break it into those two segments, a destination group or a journey group. Now, at some stage, the journey group will get to that destination, but either or will bring you to the same path. But the whole goal of this is that you find a group of people who are on the same journey as yourself, who are on the same process and the same path as yourself, and then you can find solace, you can find comfort, and you can find support within either one of those groups. And in a society where that's hard to find, it's really, really, really important. And this is all about you as a person. You are the most important person you'll ever meet. If you're an athlete, you are the most important person you will ever coach. If, like Oscar Wilde had this famous statement, slogan, whatever you want to call it, selfishness is not living the life you want to live, it's expecting someone else to live the life you want to live. And it all comes back to this process of it being about you. And I think that as Irish people in particular, we see that as being a negative thing, because we see that as being a selfish thing, or it's, you know, that we can't put ourselves in front of anyone else. But the bottom line is that you are no good to anyone else if you're broken as a person yourself, or if you don't have a deep level of understanding of self, okay? And that's the whole purpose of this Beyond the Physical, all right? So I'm going to start with this analogy, okay? So I don't know if anyone has seen this before, okay? But it's the elephant, the rider, and the path, and it's an analogy of the mind, okay? So the path is your environment, okay? It's what you've laid out for yourself. Now, there's a lot of things, and I'm going to speak about these in a couple of minutes, because there's a lot of things that influence that environment, okay? But that's what it is. The elephant is your subconscious mind, okay? So when we think about the subconscious mind, that's 95% of our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs come from that subconscious mind. It's on autopilot. And now the sad thing about this is that 90% of those thoughts, beliefs, and actions are the same as what you had yesterday, okay? So we're just on autopilot in terms of how we function as humans, okay? And then this is in research, by the way, lads. I'm not pulling this from the sky. And 70% of those thoughts, feelings, and actions are negative, okay? So that's through self-talk, that's through thoughts. And the thing about that is that 90% of our thoughts, feelings, and actions are formed before the age of 6. So the Jesuits had this famous quote, "Give me the boy before 6 and I'll show you the man." So everything is formed, all right, before the age of 6. And it's really hard, okay, that if you put yourself as this rider, okay, that small rider will not control that elephant, okay? So we really have to think about reprogramming the subconscious mind, okay? And I'll get deep into the neuroscience of this. And lads, again, two unbelievably good resources here are the two books that I've laid out below. And The Biology of Belief breaks down from like a neurological level what beliefs are and, you know, how we form our beliefs. But there's a part of our brain called the hypothalamus, okay? And that essentially is like a storekeeper. And that's where we store all our thoughts and all our belief system, okay? And your brain and your mind will do whatever it can to keep homeostasis. So that hypothalamus could be absolutely wrecking you, it could be making you, or it could be breaking you, but it really doesn't care. It's just on this autopilot all the time. And every time we have a belief, okay, neurons that fire together will wire together. When we have a belief, okay, we have a thought, we have a feeling, we have a neurological chemical that's released when we get that feeling through an emotion. And what that does is it reaffirms our belief in the first place, because we are just myelinating, okay, and making that belief system stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And if that's a negative belief or a negative thought, then we have a negative feeling and a negative emotion attached to that, and that gets stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. So I'll say that again, neurons that fire together, wire together. So we have to, first of all, establish, you know, what these negative emotions are, the biology of these beliefs, okay? That will help us to improve our map so we know where we're going, motivate our elephant, and then clear our path. So that's what we're trying to do here, okay? When it comes to the environment, there are perceptions of the environment, okay? The people around us, our senses, you know, all these things will trigger how we respond in a given moment to the environment we're in, and that's our path. And it's really important that we keep our path as clear as possible. So elephant, rider, path. And this is where people kind of spend a lot of time, and how do we change behavior, okay? So when we understand this, that traditionally there's two ways that we've always tried to change behavior. One is through shock and one is through repetition. So I'll give you a simple example. You can get into your car when you come off this call, all right? You can pick up your phone and you can talk to someone. You're driving down the road and all of a sudden you meet a checkpoint. Once you hit that checkpoint, the guard stops you. You've got the phone in your hand, you'll drop it because you'll get a shock. Irrespective of whether you get points, you get a fine, no matter what happens or what the tangible outcome from that is, you have gotten a shock. You will not pick up that phone again and finish the call. You'll turn it off. You'll drive for a certain amount of time, okay? And it might be days, or it might be hours, or it might be weeks, but you will not use your phone again because you've been shocked, all right? So that's one way that it'll change your behavior. Now, if we stick with the example of the car, right? The other one is repetition. So let's, for argument's sake, you get into your car, you don't put on your seatbelt, and you start hearing that annoying sound that goes beep, 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 beep. That's just repetition in your mind. So you'll just put on your seatbelt. And after a couple of days or a couple of weeks, right, you'll put on your seatbelt before you'll hit that, or before you'll hear that noise, because you don't want to hear the noise, because the repetition of the noise has annoyed you to the point where you don't want to hear it anymore. So we can change behavior through shock or through repetition. So what do I see? I see people who have gotten a shock, i.e. have had a scare with their health. And what do? They change their behavior, right? It works. There's no shadow of a doubt about it. It works. But sometimes we can get the shock and it's too late. And what I mean by that is you can be driving your car, phone up to your ear, you're not concentrating, and you crash. Or you can be one of the unlucky people that get that shock from a health point, but it's too late, all right? So we need to understand that these are the two common ways that we can change behavior, right? But my point is that we can also change behavior if we delve deep into understanding who we are and what actually drives our behaviors in the first place, all right? And then when we understand motivation, we have this framework of the three key motivators, all right? So first of all, it's pleasure or pain. It's what you sense in the moment. People generally, they will try to find pleasure and they will try to avoid pain, okay? So it's like an electric fence. You know, you put an electric fence around something, you know, straight away you get a shock off it, right? Then you're tapping into this first one, you get the shock, you're going to keep away from it. And the second motivation framework is you felt pain, so again, you're not going to go near it again, right? The inverse is also true. People get pleasure from eating. So like sugar is highly addictive. So when you understand that, let's call a spade, there's probably no one on the call here that would have Ben and Jerry's and not enjoy eating Ben and Jerry's. It tastes good, so there's a pleasure from it, right? So that's what motivates the person to actually eat it in the first place. And, you know, there's marketers that understand that, and that's why they put more sugar into this stuff, because there's an addiction element to it, right? The other one is hope or fear. So it's anticipation. Like the coronavirus is a really good example of this. So why are people washing their hands so much now? It's out of fear, okay? They don't want to get a virus. Why are people walking around with masks over their face? It's fear, okay? They don't want to catch the virus, right? Why do people take vitamin C? It's out of hope. So if I take vitamin C, I won't get sick. So it's hope motivator. And again, marketers and people understand this, okay? If you listen to I was listening to an ad from Leia Healthcare one day driving the car, and the ad was, it was motivation through fear. You know, it was a case study of a woman in her 40s who had 2 or 3 kids who had got breast cancer, and she told her story. And I'm sure that there was literally thousands of women the same age, in the same situation, listening to that ad, and that triggered a fear response, okay? And then we have social acceptance or rejection, the feeling of belonging or the feeling of rejection. So why do people share things on social media? So there's something that resonates with you on social media and you share it. It's not belonging to you. You didn't invent it. You didn't come up with it. It's probably going to promote someone else's business, but you share it because there's an element of feeling of belonging, because you can understand it and you want to be accepted by aligning yourself with it. And then we have the fear of rejection. And like, again, why do an awful lot of people not really post what they truly mean or what they truly see or what they truly think? Because they fear being rejected, okay? So again, understanding them is really important, but then we have to think of the context of perception and environment. And this is really, really important, okay? So this is where we need to understand ourselves as a true person, okay? So I'll use myself as an example. I think I'm a good strength coach, okay? I'm not a good academic writer, but I'm determined to be a good academic writer. I'm an average surfer. I've tried it a few times. I'm a very slow reader, and it irritates me because I like reading. And I'm a terrible singer, an absolute terrible singer, right? So I'm good at some things. I'm okay at other things. I'm poor at other things. But do any of them change who I am as a person? Because when I look at the context, the motivation, and the behavior, in one way they do, because I'm a good strength coach, so I'm really motivated to be a better one. And it changes my behavior in terms of how I feel about myself. I would be really confident in a weight room. Would I be confident singing in front of people? No, I wouldn't. Absolutely not, because I know that I'm not a good singer, so I wouldn't be motivated to sing in front of people. So when we look at context around behavior or motivation, it's important that we understand that there's some things we're going to be good at, there's some things we're going to be poor at, and that drives our motivation and our behavior around those things. But it doesn't change who I am as a person. So if I, stood up and sang in front of people and made an absolute, idiot out of myself, doesn't mean that I feel bad about myself. Or if someone asks me to read a paragraph and I'm really slow and labored reading it, do I feel bad about myself? Or the other side of that is, if I, write a strength program and someone gets really good results, do I really feel good in myself and latch onto that? The overriding point here is that all these things shouldn't change me as a person. They shouldn't change who I am, the deepest level of self. It should make no ounce of a difference, because if it does, it means that we're attaching ourselves to some form of a strength we have, and we are aligning our self-image and our identity to that strength. And we are infinitely more powerful than just being a good strength coach or being an okay writer, okay? And that kind of brings us around to this idea of athletic identity, right? And it doesn't even have to be athletic identity. It's just the fact that there's a lot in the research around athletic identity. And that is that you have someone who's, an elite athlete, and we'll use like a 1500 meter runner. Someone is an elite 1500 meter runner, and they attach all their self-worth, their self-image, their everything of their self around that. And then the pressure to achieve creates this confusion between approval, love, and worthiness. And then what happens is self-worth becomes contingent on achieving, right? And we see this with kids an awful lot. And I see this with kids an awful lot, especially, underage, like 12, 13, 14-year-olds, where they're looking out to the sideline for their parents' approval, right? For their ability to play on the field, okay? And the bottom line is that I'm not saying that that's a good thing or a bad thing, because a child will always look for a parent's approval in any way anyway. But the point is that we carry that into teenage years, and then we move from the parents being looking for the parents' approval, and we look for our peers' approval, or we look for our manager's approval, or we look for coaches' approval, and then we look for, once, if you get to the point where you're building a profile as a player or an athlete, then we start looking for the approval of the masses. And when that happens, you're really treading a thin line, because there's an expression, a pat in the back is only 6 inches from a kick up the arse. And the point being there that there's going to be days where you're going to perform, and there's going to be days, for whatever reason, where you won't perform. But if that changes how you feel about yourself to the point where you're masking your emotions, then we have a problem. That means that, we have this conflict between your athletic identity and your true identity of self. And I think that I ask these questions that, what happens when the cheering stops? Who are you then? And this is why I feel that, number one, most people who are good athletes still hold on to that, time when they were good athletes. And that's what they still talk about. And they never fill that void when they stop playing sport. And they're in their 40s, their 50s, and their 60s, and they're still talking about their day, their day, their day. And, I get that. And that's why Kobe was such a unique athlete, because he had branched off and he had just parked his athletic endeavors and he had moved on to being successful in other parts of life. And he was one athlete who had his athletic identity really honed in and really done a lot of work on that, right? And then you can look at the opposite of that and, like look at Maradona, look at Platini, look at these people who have not had integrity between the players they were and what they've done off the field, and look at the issues they've had down the line. So this goes beyond athletic identity. This goes into your career identity. This goes into your professional identity, and your career will end. Who are you becoming as a person? And, I think that that's a really strong question to ask. Then we're back to, really focusing on the rider, all right? Like daily focusing on reprogramming the subconscious mind is key to this, all right? And throughout this program, we're going to focus on these 4 areas, okay? First of all is self-knowledge. So we're going to get a deep understanding of ourselves, all right? And a deep understanding of ourselves means this. I was once at a seminar, right? And I've told this story so many times, and it was a coaching seminar, okay? And at the very start of the seminar, we were all given name badges, and on our name badges, we stuck them on our chest. And the man, Martin Rooney was his name, really qualified strength coach, had trained kind of combat sport athletes, and he'd done an awful lot of work on the athletic identity and mental fortitude. Now, this is going back in 2012, I think it was. And I had no real idea about that, right? Everything to me was about sets, it was about reps, it was about miles on the road, it was about the law of thermodynamics and, the acid-base balance and deep physiology. And I felt that that's where everything was about. I felt that it was all about the physiological, it was all about, driving people through adaptations, through using training principles, okay? And I really overlooked this side of things. It was 2012, because I've given 8 years to this being a big part of my coaching process and my own development as well. And anyway, he had this name badge on our chests, and I always sit up at the front at any kind of a seminar I go to, because I want to be able to get the most I can from him, okay? And he said, right, he called it your elevator speech. So he said, you have 60 seconds to explain who you are and what your one core purpose in life is. So I kind of thought, yeah, right, that's fine. So he pointed at me first, because I'm sitting up at the front, and he said, right, who are you? What's your one core purpose in life? So I said, right, my name is Adrian O'Brien. And he said, whoa, I'm going to stop you there. He said, you can't use your name. So I said, all right. So I said, I'm a strength coach. Whoa. He said, I'm going to stop you there again. He said, I don't want to know your name. I don't want to know your profession. I don't want to know where you're from. I don't want to know your mother's name, your father's name, your kids' names. I don't want to know where you're from. I don't want to know anything about your past. He said, who are you? And my jaw was just open. And without me using a label like I'm a strength coach, or I'm a father, or I'm a husband, or my name is Adrian, or I'm from Limerick, or I work with this, I had absolutely no idea of who I was as a person. None. And it was like this fucking road to Damascus moment for me, where I realized that, you know, beyond knowing about sets and reps, I don't know who I am as a person. And that pushed me on this path. And now I have a really solid foundation of my life script, and I have no problem with sharing that with anyone. And I will at the end of this, right? And I give 5 to 10 minutes every day, energetically reinforcing that. And it has evolved, it has changed from like that night. That was a 3-day seminar, and I remember I stayed in the B&B out in Hoth, and that was the very first day, and it was the Friday. And I remember going out to Hoth, and I was with 2 other lads, and they went for dinner, and I couldn't even leave the room. I was so blown away by this, because it was such a confrontational notion to me in my head that I didn't know who I was as a person. And I started to write, and and at the end of it, you were supposed to have it figured out, but I didn't figure it out in 3 days. It took me a while longer than that, but this is how I done it, right? So self-knowledge. So why do we need self-knowledge? We need self-knowledge so we can, number one, address our limitations, our biases, and as I said already, our subconscious, because we all have them. So, you know, the environments we grew up in, our teachers, they all, as I've laid out already, have set the foundations for our thoughts, our beliefs, and our feelings, right? So once we know what they are, we can optimize the gifts we have, and we can try and develop what we need to develop. And then in subsequent weeks, after we develop this self-knowledge, we will work on movement through habits and routines, your project, call it whatever you want. So habits and routines, lads, not to jump beyond that, right? I'm not going to get in, like, habits and routines. Like, what I've given you is the challenge of 5 minutes of doing the X squat daily. It's just a habit, okay? It's just a habit of setting your intention to try to improve a capacity in your life. That's all it is, okay? Like, we all have habits and routines, and we're all giving our lives to something, right? Some people are giving their life to someone else's dream and someone else's idea or someone else's project. As a matter of fact, probably 95% of society are giving their lives to someone else's project for a financial reward to that, okay? So, you know, there's someone else. If you don't have a really good idea of what your project is, then you'll just become part of someone else's. And, you know, that's just the truth of it. And again, like, I don't want to be confrontational with this, but it is the sad truth. You know, it's a case of everything is just a distraction. Everything is laid out so that we really don't think about these things deeply. Because the truth of it is that if we thought deeply about these things, there wouldn't be enough foot soldiers to make the world go round. If the world was full of people who thought they were limitless, and who thought that they could change the world, and that they thought that they had a worthy ideal, or they had their project laid out, then that wouldn't work either. But the dominant paradigm now is that 99.9% of the world's population are just following someone else's project. So my challenge to everyone here is to establish your project. And like Earl Nightingale defines success, and success is the realization of a worthy ideal. So, you know, it's the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. And what I mean by that is it's something that it actually encompasses everything I spoke about already. It's establishing your worthy ideal, and then you're progressively moving towards it with your daily habits and routines. It's not about something that you're going to achieve tomorrow, but you have it outlined and you're progressively moving towards it. So habits and routines are 5-minute blocks of juggling, dressing your bed in the morning. There's a reason that the most successful people in the world, and success leaves clues, that the most successful people in the world in the mornings just wake up and the first thing they do is dress their bed and meditate. It's just a routine. So what are they doing? What is prayer? Prayer is it's a request to the subconscious. What is faith? Faith is something that you can't see. Faith is something that we can't quantify, but faith is something that we believe in with no real scientific evidence to back it up. That's faith. And having faith in yourself or faith in something that you can't see, that is a gift. That is one of the most unique gifts anyone can have. Anyone can have. So 5 minutes of meditation, dressing your bed, working on your life script, reinforcing your life script, reinforcing your values, reinforcing your vision for yourself, then 5 minutes spent energetically doing that every day, that's reprogramming the subconscious. But who does that? What do we do instead? First 5 minutes, we go on the phone, we look at Facebook, we look at social media, we look at someone else's lives, we look at the news. What does the news do? Drives fear, drives hate, drives bigotry. All those motivators that I spoke about a while ago that are probably pushing us on the wrong path. Why don't we open up, like, why don't we hear advertisements, you know, with quotes from Marcus Aurelius or with quotes from people who have done unique things in the world? Why don't we hear quotes from Einstein or 5-minute blocks about, you know, the people who have shaped and defined the world that we live in now? We don't hear from those people. We don't hear about those people. We just get fed. You know, I told this story on the nutrition talk I gave a couple of weeks ago. You know, when I watched the Champions League final with my middle son 2 years ago, and there was 2 minutes of ads that came on. And the 2 minutes of ads that came on were Betfair 365, Permanent TSB, McDonald's, Budweiser, and Paddy Power. That's the shit that we're feeding ourselves. That's what we're putting into the subconscious mind. I say we are feeding ourselves because we are consciously choosing to take it in. That's why this is called conscious awareness. That's why this talk is called conscious awareness. If we consciously choose to take it in, then that's embedded in our subconscious mind. And there is marketers that are paid hundreds of thousands a year to think of the next joke on the next Paddy Power ad to make it funny enough that it will distract the people to the point where they won't see the greater message. They'll just remember the funny part. And that will set a part of the brain that will just remember the Paddy Power part. And what I said a while ago, you're becoming part of someone else's project. There is someone creaming off the top of that. And you just become the foot soldier who's caught in the whole game and the whole perpetual wheel of working on a Friday for your paycheck. Then you buy the new pair of jeans or the new belt buckle or the new iPhone, and you work for that for the rest of your life. Or we can look beyond that, and you know, we can look for a deeper project. And the deepest project and the whole project with what I'm speaking about today, it's called Project Me. It's called Beyond the Physical. It's called you being the most important person that you will ever meet in your life. And you know, my father told me this one time, you know, he said, the first person you'll meet when you leave is yourself. So you can run away wherever you want to run away from, you know, you can have all these thoughts and you can think, oh, I need a nice holiday and I'll just get away from all this stress. But the first person you meet when the plane lands down in Spain, when you sit down in a quiet room, is yourself. It's the same thoughts, it's the same beliefs, it's the same feelings, and you're just reinforcing them chemically through emotions, and neurons that fire together will wire together, and you'll just establish more biases to reaffirm those beliefs. Conversation I had with Dan Logan on the podcast this week was intuition versus bias and differentiating between intuition and bias. And it's a hard thing to do. But anyway, so we then work on our project and the mental faculties, and the result of this is we will have clear defined values, clear defined purpose, and clear defined vision. And could you just imagine 10 years of every child finishing the Leaving Cert, right? Just 10 years of every child finishing at 19, having clear defined values, clear defined purpose, and clear defined vision, where this country could be, where society could be, where humanity could be. But we don't touch that. We don't look at that. We fucking do algebra and you know, we learn things for the sake of learning things. And then they go to college and go bananas, start taking drugs and go down that line because they have low self-esteem, or they don't have the ability to say no because they have a value system, but they're just not strong enough because they don't have a self-image that's strong enough to say no. And, you know, that's where we are, unfortunately. So where do we go with this? We ask the hard questions, okay? And this is the task. The task is to ask the hard questions, okay? These are the questions that I asked myself that allowed me to establish my life script that I'll share with you, okay? So question one is, what or who would you be if you knew you couldn't fail? And the thing about it is, just the fear of failure, the whole perception around failure, and public failure in particular, it just scares people to the point where it stagnates them, okay? And they fail to take things on in life. Like, again, I'll go back to juggling. I'll go back to foot juggling. I'll go back to all these things that I always throw in terms of challenges to people. It's not about juggling. It's not about foot juggling. It's about dealing with failure. It's about just picking a ball up 20 times in 5 minutes. It's a lesson in failure. Life should be a lesson in failure, because if you're not failing in life, then you're not developing and progressing in life. You know, there's 3 spots to development, right? So, you know, we have our comfort zone, and your comfort zone is where you never fail. You're achieving everything all the time. Then you have that, what you'll call an anxiety zone, where you're overreaching all the time. And it's not good to be in there, because you don't want to reinforce failure every single day of the week, because you'd want to have the mental fortitude of a Shaolin monk to deal with that, right? But somewhere in the middle is a sweet spot. And that's where there are parts of every day where you realize that, right, I'm working towards something. I don't have this figured out, but I'm on the right path. Now, the ego gets in the way with so many people, because so many people, when I speak about this stuff, and I give these talks publicly, I go to companies and give these talks, and I look down around and I can see it now. I can use my emotional awareness to see people, and they just put this mask up and they half smile back at me and they say, I have all this figured out. And it's just a front. It's just insecurity. That's all it is. No one has this figured out. You could spend your life trying to figure out, you know, these things. And the people who don't have them figured out, it's masked with other things. And that's why they turn to gambling, they turn to drugs, they turn to alcohol, they turn to porn, they turn to buying new clothes. They're looking for this external validation. They're looking for this feeling of self-worth through something external. And because they're chasing that feeling instead of, you know, looking deep inside themselves. So this is question number one. So who or what would you be if you knew you couldn't fail? It goes beyond your job. It goes beyond other aspects of your life, okay? Question two, what are your core personal values? You know, again, we have to be really careful with this, right? First of all, okay? Because again, I go into a lot of teams, a lot of club environments with sports teams, and you'll see these values on the wall, right? Respect, honesty, gratitude, right? And then I will look at the players on the field, and I will see anything but the values that are on the wall. I will see acts of greed. I will see acts of disrespect. I will see acts that are not aligned with the values that are on the wall. And I think the hard thing to do there is, it's hard to construct a common value system among a group of people, because it's actually probably one of the hardest things you would ever do in humanity. But yet we try and do it all the time. And it's like teams try and do it within the space of a couple of weeks. The truth of it is that it's an awful lot easier to do for yourself, because you can control yourself, you're accountable to yourself, and you can check yourself, right? And what I mean by that is, you check yourself before you wreck yourself, right? And that's why once you have your values defined, everything becomes a values decision. Everything in life is then a values decision, right? So I'll give you an example. If someone smokes, they're going to spend 12, I don't know what it is, let's say 12 euros on a packet of fags, right? They don't value their health, they value smoking, and therefore they make that decision. Now, you can say, I'm addicted, fine, but then you get lung cancer and you're back with the confronting scenario of shock to change your behavior, okay? So then, if you don't purchase fags anymore and you give them up, you're now starting to value your health, your behaviors change through the shock of what has happened. This is just tying everything that I've said in to this point, right? Every decision becomes a values decision. My food, my education, my family. That's where my money goes, right? I spend X amount of money on my food every week. People think I'm crazy because of, I eat mostly organic, right? But to me, it's a values decision because I value my health, okay? I value the nutrition, I value the energy I get from the food. So that becomes a very easy decision for me, right? I have absolutely no problem with paying someone who is better than me or who has a skill set that I don't have, or who has, back to what I said already, is in that, back to that journey versus destination, who's in that destination group that I want to get to. I have no problem with paying for their services so that I can further and better myself in life. Okay. To me, living for the weekend, this concept of you only live once, YOLO, that is at the heart of the problem. Because again, that's the dominant paradigm. And the concept of better than yesterday, that Keynesian philosophy, that just 1% better every day. If we adopted that philosophy, humanity would be in a far better place. It would serve us an awful lot better than you only live once. Because you only live once means that you live for the weekend, you blow your income the weekend, you get back on the train Monday and you become part of someone else's plan, okay? So your core personal values will define, they will direct every action that you have in life, okay? Whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's beneficial, whether it's desirable, or whether it's constructive, it doesn't matter. So you have to determine those values and it has to become priority, okay? So my tip, this is how I done it. So I sat down and I just wrote, honesty, respect, gratitude, growth from failure, positivity. I wrote these things down. And then I went for a walk because you're going to end up with quite an exhaustive list. And I just cleared my head, went for a walk. I actually give it a day or two. And I thought about those values and I thought, well, right, what am I being true to and what am I not being true to? Integrity is the difference between what you say you're going to do and what you do. And all you ever have in life is integrity, okay? And it's the one thing that I hold really close to myself is integrity. I'm the same person with my wife at home that I am with my kids, that I am in a group of fellas, as I am with my mother and father. I am me. If people don't like me, that's no problem by me, but at least I'm the same person, right? I don't have to wear 5 or 6 different hats. And I remember listening to an interview from Richie McCaw one time, and he was asked that very question. And that was kind of aligned with the answer he gave. Now, I'm not going to go into the book Legacy, but it's a phenomenal book if you haven't read it. It's not about the All Blacks, and it's not really, sorry, it is about the All Blacks, but it's not necessarily about rugby, it's about life. And I was really lucky enough to have been on a Zoom call with some of the All Blacks and speaking about their process of setting up that black book. And it was phenomenal in terms of just the humility in terms of how they carry themselves. And I think that that's probably the right word. There's no ego, there's no arrogance, there's no I'm better than anyone else. They love people. Yeah, their big slogan is love people for who they are, not what they do. And I think that, if we could live our lives like that, again, it would serve us well. But you write those values down and you define them and break them down to 5 or 6 core personal values. And then write them down and make them part of your life script. Make them part of your story that you tell yourself every single day. And then if you're ever left with a decision, or if you're ever forced to, you know, a 50-50 decision of whether I should or shouldn't do this, then refer back to your values. If they align with your values, it makes that decision an awful lot easier. If they don't, then it becomes an easy decision as well. Then you can live true to yourself and true to your values and true to yourself as a core. And like, I had this discussion with a lad lately. We had a Zoom call, and he's in the same community as I am. He's a trainer, and he has a really huge Instagram following, right? And like, we had this discussion around selling out, okay? And, you know, he was saying, you nearly have to go mainstream to sell out, to, you know, get the influencers on and go down this line to really grow your business. And I agreed with him to a point, right? Because I'd never said that I wouldn't sell out, because there becomes a point where in order for your message to grow, you have to go to a wider audience, right? So I try not to speak in absolutes. I think it's important not to speak in absolutes and say, I will never, because then you're probably setting yourself up for failure. Like, listen, I could throw it out to the group here. Ethically, who agrees with torture? Like, would you see torture as being, is there a place for torture in society in 2020? And like, we are all very human. I would like to think that the logically minded people would say no. You'd say torture is a terrible thing. There's no place for that in humanity. There's no place for that in 2020. But then if I reframe the question, and if I said, right, there is someone who has planted an atomic bomb in Dublin city centre. He's in a hotel room. His hands are tied. He knows where it is. And we have 2 minutes for him to tell us so that we can detonate it. Or we can prevent it from going off. Then is torture an acceptable action? And it just reframes the question. And all of a sudden, something that seems so unacceptable, so morally and ethically unacceptable, becomes something that you could consider. So speaking in absolutes, when we change the context of the narrative of the conversation, can be quite different, right? And that's where, you know, your core personal value might be, you know, not to hurt people, but then just think of the context of it, okay? Question number 3, what makes you genuinely happy? And this is close to your core personal values, because I think that if you can tie your values to your behaviors, then you're going to be a happier person, okay? Give you an example, like we always have to look at these things, right? So I had a contract with the team I'm with at the moment, and at the end of last year, I got offered a contract or an opportunity to work with a so-called stronger team. And in terms of my professional progression, it was a no-brainer, right? But from a value system standpoint, it was a no-brainer for me, and I declined the offer, because to me, my word was more important than anything else. And I truly believe that I would have, if I had taken that offer for the 6 months after that, I would have felt like crap, and I would have second guessed myself, and it would have actually affected what I would have been able to give to the new job. So it wouldn't have made me happy as a person, right? So that's how your core personal values are really aligned to your happiness, okay? And it's amazing, like, when I ask this, the amount of people who actually have to stop and think. You know, you have to actually stop and think about what makes you genuinely happy. And I think that when you actually start to think about what makes you genuinely happy, okay, then you can start to think of ways in which you can incorporate more of that into your life. And of course, you can look at the opposite of this, is what makes you unhappy. And you can start to eliminate those things from your life. And again, it's like Einstein's level of genius. You know, the highest level of genius is simple. And if you can simplify this process as much as you can, then it becomes something that you can achieve and that you can outline. So you can just put on one axis happy, on the other axis unhappy, eliminate what makes you unhappy, write down what makes you happy, okay? And just try to simplify the process to the point where you might have 3 or 4 things. And I'll show you how I tied it into mine. Okay, if money were no object, how would you live your life differently? Okay, it's kind of really not about money, this question, right? It's more about, I suppose, thinking outside the limits of the aspirations that we have for ourselves, right? Because people think that, you know, an awful lot of the limits that we have is down to finances, but it's not. It's not really. Money won't make you happy. Money, you know, that's deeply embedded in research. You know, people who have won lots and lots of money who have said that, if anything, it has made them extremely unhappy. I'm going to paraphrase my father again, because I remember him telling me one time, you should never worry about money until you have it. And if you don't have money, what's the point of worrying about it? And I thought it was a really, really good way of looking at things, you know. And he said, when you do have money, well, you know, then you have to worry about what you do with it. So an awful lot of time, and I know people who have, as the more money they have gotten, the more miserable they have gotten. So, you know, it's not about money, it's about thinking about your aspirations as a person, and look, how will you live your life differently if you didn't have these barriers, or if you didn't have these shackles attached to your actions. And then the hardest question, I found this to be the hardest question anyway, right? You know, would you be happy if your son or daughter turned out exactly like you? And I remember, like, oh, this was confrontational. I was asked this question directly by a good friend of mine, a mentor of mine, actually, right? And he said that to me. He said, would you be happy? And at the outset, I said, yeah, I'd be happy. And then I started to think about my own little insecurities and my own little self-limiting beliefs. And I started to think, well, I'd hate for any one of my kids to have those feelings or those insecurities. And then the question went from a resounding yes to a kind of a maybe to a no. And it was possibly one of the most confrontational questions I've ever asked myself. And I think that if you don't have kids, it's an even better time to ask yourself, because I had kids at that point in my life, and I probably again, I'm cautious all the time with the words I use. I certainly had passed some of my insecurities to my kids, without a shadow of a doubt. So if your kids are going to become a product of you, okay, whether you like it or not. So I think if you don't have kids, it's an even better time to have a look at these questions and try to hypothetically role play and, you know, just come up with this. And again, like, closing your eyes and removing yourself from the external environment, all right, that in itself is meditation, right? And when you do that and you ask yourself these questions, these deeper questions, you will actually get a different type of an answer. You'll be amazed, like, how much your environment plays, and you know what I mean, the people around you. Then when you have that done, you can start to define your core personal values. You asking these questions, then you'll develop your life script. I start, like, I recently give, during lockdown, I give a number of presentations at different things for different people. And I always start with this. Like, there were presentations on, one was on small-sided games and physiological adaptations, another one was on coaching. My introduction is always this, you know, I'm healthy, happy, and strong. I live each day in life with my core personal values of self-responsibility, positivity, self-development, and respect. I'm devoting my life to creation. I'm an inspiration for those who seek, and they respect me. Everyone else doesn't matter. My life is fulfilled when I'm looking forward and growing. If money were no object, I'd be doing what I'm doing now. My daily actions reinforce my desires to be healthy, happy, and strong, and I will never settle for anything less than I can be. And that's me. Now, it took me a while to get to that, but that is me as a person. Like, that's not my job, that's not my name, that's not the town I'm from, that's me. And, you know, I can pull maybe 0.1% of the population of the world might know themselves. But if I have a really bad day at work, that doesn't affect that. If I'm involved with a team and we have the most terrible year, doesn't affect that. If I, on the other set, like, and this is probably if I have a really good year and a really successful event happen, it still doesn't affect what's on the screen there. What's on the screen there evolves, but it's a constant in the sense that that's who I am in my deepest self. That defines all my thoughts, it defines all my actions, and it defines all my behaviors. Now, when I say it evolves, what I mean by that is everything evolves in life because circumstances change. You know, my coaching philosophy evolves, my philosophy around parenting evolves, my philosophy around being a husband evolves, because you have to adapt. Like, adaptability is the best ability. But that is my deepest self, so to speak. So the task that we have from this lesson is to define what I'm just going to call your life script, right? So we do that by addressing the questions, defining your core personal values, like what genuinely makes you happy, like what genuinely makes me happy. That question, that's when I'm looking forward and growing. That's what makes me happy. It's as simple as that. If I won €1 million tomorrow morning, and if I was sitting on a beach, I wouldn't last a week on a beach. I would be bored. I would be just pissed off. I want to be out of there. If I had 20 million in the bank, like, why does Warren Buffett still get up every morning? And Warren Buffett doesn't get up because he wants more money. You know, why did Kobe? I'm not by any means comparing myself to Warren Buffett or Kobe, but my point is that, like, why did Kobe get up every morning at 5 a.m. when he had so many rings on his finger, when he had so many MVPs? Why? He was driven by the process of developing and growing, because that's what he was addicted to. That was his purpose. That was his elephant, right? That was his subconscious. That's what was driving his behavior. So to me, I'm happiest when I'm growing and I'm moving forward and when I'm creating. You know, the other side of that is I'm also very aware that the biases that come with that, I have a creative personality, and sometimes I move from jump from thing to thing, and I forget about the nuts and bolts of things, you know, and maybe I don't explain things properly, and you know what I mean, the organization of things then goes a little bit skewed, but I'm aware of that, and it's stuff that I'm definitely trying to get right. So those questions will direct you. And once you have this life script, okay, then we're going to work in 2 weeks' time on daily actions, right? And what I mean by that is just habits, actions daily that we reinforce this life script. Tony Robbins, right? You can like him or hate him, right? One of the most successful men of all time who came from nothing. When you realize what Tony Robbins came from, Tony Robbins, I won't, if I can remember, did he have 3 fathers before the age of 12? You know, really broken home. And Tony Robbins is a multi-millionaire. He has worked with, from a man who has come, his initial goal in life was to earn more than what one of his fathers earned as a truck driver, who was the father that earned the most, and that was like 20,000. And he wanted to earn more than 20,000. That was just his initial goal in life. And now I remember listening to a podcast, or was it even just an interview, and they said, what motivates you? And he said, I don't want people to hurt like I hurt. That was it. I don't want people to feel like I felt as a child. It's not about money to him anymore, you see. It's like he's worth millions, and he speaks to millions, and his tickets are 10,000, 15,000. And like, he was pulled at it. And I remember the person who interviewed him said, yeah, but why do you still charge 15,000? And he said, well, if I don't put a value on it, people won't value it. If I don't put a value like that on it, then, you know, and he's right, because if there isn't some kind of a monetary attachment to something, then there's no value to it. And again, there's so much research in that as well. I guarantee you that if Tony Robbins had these events and he opened up to the wider public initially, you probably would have had the same amount, but you would have had a lot of time wasters, people who wouldn't have been emotionally invested, and you wouldn't have got the same results. So, it all ties back in. As I said already, success leaves clues. And what Tony Robbins does is he wakes up every single morning and he recites affirmations, which is a life script. It's a request to the subconscious. It's like prayer. And he bounces on a trampoline every day for 5-10 minutes. And what people don't see is, you bounce. When you bounce like that, you're draining lymph. You have a wellness component to that. You're energetically shifting your intention for the day, and you're reinforcing what you want to reinforce. So you're changing that elephant. Okay. So that's our task. That's our challenge. By all means, lads, if you need direction on this, contact me. Okay. Loads of people couldn't get on this live for whatever reason. So what I'll do is I'll have the recordings up on the groups, and in 2 weeks' time, we'll try and go over to Saturday morning again. And if we have any questions, bang them out there, lads. If we don't want to kind of throw them out to the group, you can hit me individually. There's no panic with that either, okay?